Hello, this is Liz Lawless, your co-host for Author Adventure, and I'm going to jump in today and start. This is episode 23. We're going to be talking with author Jordan Thomas in just a minute. But since it's the first of the year and we're kicking off the new year, I really wanted to share that one of the secrets is that we often tell people is to get a blueprint, what we call a publishing plan, because what we find out with people, people want to write. We always tell people just start writing. People ask, what do we do first? We just start writing. Share your experience, write it down, record it, type it. I don't care how you do that, but that just gets you into the flow. But you really should take a step back and think about a plan. Think about how you want to write your book. Think about, do you want to write it? Do you want to type it? Do you want to record it and then transcribe it? Think about how you want to publish. Do you want to self-publish or publish traditionally or publish through a partner publisher like us? And then how are you going to market? Think of 2 or 3 ways that you want to market your book. And then you really need to choose some way to connect with people, because all along while you're writing and even while you're publishing, you can be sharing tips and part of the story with people. You can be sharing when you start your publishing or when you start your editing. People want to know those kinds of things, and that helps you build your list. So you should always start as you mean to go on. And so that's why we think a publishing plan is important, and we'll be talking more about that. And if you have any questions, you can always put those in the comments and we can talk more about that, or you can message me or Russ. We're both on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on other platforms, so be sure to get in touch. But I don't want to take up any more time because we've got a lot to go over today. We're very excited to have our author today, Jordan Thomas. Jordan has published, he's recently graduated, but he has published 3 books, a couple of poetry books, which we'll be talking about, and then a book about creativity, which I'm really excited about because that's an area of expertise that I feel like I'm engaged in. And my very first children's book was about the brain and creativity and how the brain works and how the creative process works. So Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much again for having me on.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So we just talk to authors about their author journey. And so you're like kind of way ahead of some folks. So you're young. You just graduated, right, from college with a degree in business communication and public relations. So that's
Mhm.
exciting. I was going to major in public relations, and they didn't have public relations.
It's
And when
funny.
I was going to school, where I was going to school at, they only had journalism, broadcast, and speech. So
Mhm.
I ended up going journalism and speech. But man, I really would have liked to. I wish they'd have had a PR because that's a lot more fun, than
It is. That's what
sometimes.
it started out with, going into college. That's why I entered into college without majoring, but I ended up changing my major and coming back full circle in the PR.
Right, right. Okay. Well, great. Well, and so while did you publish your first book in high school or when you were in college, or when did you publish your first poetry book?
It was my first year, first quarter, I would say, in college, back in
Okay.
November of 2015.
Right, right, great. Okay. And so how did you get started? Did you always write, or that something you just decided to do once you got into college?
I've always been a writer, as far as I can remember,
Uh-huh.
especially doing in high school. Um, always did poetry back then and songs with my brother. We always wrote songs, hundreds of songs,
All right,
as far
right.
as
That's
elementary
great.
school. But
Uh-huh.
I never thought of writing a book up until my first year of college. I've always been an avid reader, and it's something I've always wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
In fact, June of that year, I said I would write a book. I posted on Facebook, said that I want to write a book, and next thing you know, I have one published in November of that same year.
You're right, and you did it. You wrote it, you published it, and that's a big part of it too. Is committing to it and writing down and saying I'm going to do it, making the decision.
Oh yeah,
I think. Do you think? Because just saying it out loud or writing it down, and then looking at it, there's just something about that process that makes it more, I don't know, viable or real or
yeah.
something.
It sounds good until you put it into action.
Well, that's the thing, because there are a lot of moving parts, aren't there? So I'm sure you
Yeah.
had to learn a lot of things, but now with technology, we talk about it all the time that there's so many more opportunities now than there were, even 5 or 10 years ago, and certainly 30 years ago, 40 years ago when I started. But, we didn't have the access to social media or to the multiple book platforms like you have today, but it's still
Mhm.
confusing. So, what was your kind of your first step? Did you just see the Amazon stuff, or where did you publish? Did you publish somewhere else?
I published in it was an independent company that was merged with Amazon called CreateSpace.
Right.
Not there
Okay.
anymore,
Yep.
and that's what I
Yep.
used.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So, CreateSpace was basically the precursor to KDP. A lot of times
Hmm.
people hear Kindle Publishing now, and CreateSpace was that company. Actually, it was a separate company, and it was fabulous. It was great. I
It
mean,
was.
we could get in 24 hours. I got an answer to any questions, or within 12 to 24 hours, they always responded. You could actually talk to a real person. You
Yeah.
actually could talk about design or ISBN numbers or whatever it was, and
Oh yeah.
it was a great platform. And I was a little disappointed when KDP came along, but I understand why they wanted to have everything under one roof.
Yeah.
But I was sad to see my friends at CreateSpace go. But
Yeah. Me too.
well, good. Well, that's great. So you did the first poetry book, and then did you do the second poetry book and then your other book, or how did that work? Have I got that right?
Pretty much, yes. My
Okay.
second one was released in May 2016.
Hmm.
I've always had a lot of poetry written down. I just never thought of assembling it into an actual book until that time period.
Uh-huh.
Um, but that's how I use a lot of my free time during college when I don't have any homework or when I'm
Right.
off work.
Uh-huh.
I just write, whether songs or poetry. It's been a great way of expressing my sentiments, whether that's personal things or occurrences going on in the world. Um,
Right. Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing about it. I mean, I never wrote as much poetry as a lot of friends, but just the fact that you had a bunch of stuff already written and you could go in and just assimilate and organize it and put it together and say, well, maybe these go together, or this goes together, or this
mhm.
this fits with this. Oh, now maybe I got
Yeah.
8 or 10 on a certain topic or a certain subject. So I hope that y'all that are listening, these are really good key tips here. This is a gold nugget. Take some information that you've already got, some things you've already written, and just organize it.
Hmm. Or called
And
repurposing is what it's
yeah,
called now.
yeah, and you don't have to have a 300 or 400 page book,
No.
for sure. You can start with a small book, or you can start with something that maybe you've already got, that you've been working on off and
Hmm.
on. So,
Simplicity is key, and less is more.
right.
I try to stick by that.
Yeah, and especially today. So you can find Jordan on LinkedIn. He's obviously there at linkedin.com/in/Jordan, JORDAN, Thomas, THOMAS. I'm spelling that because this is also a podcast. So somebody may be just listening to the show and they won't be able to see the graphics on the screen. So periodically I'll kind of do that too. And I know we've got our Amazon links, and we'll put those up maybe here in a little bit too.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah. So what do you think was the hardest? What was the hardest part of either publishing? It doesn't sound like the writing was that hard. Maybe the publishing wasn't that hard either. Maybe it's the marketing.
It was the writing, honestly, not writing the content itself, but the different circumstances in the midst of writing because I was doing all my classes in college at that
Right,
time.
and schoolwork at the same time. Yeah.
In general ed, the general education stuff is not how it used to be. I
Yeah.
It took me 6 years to get my math requirement out of the way. Out of the
Right,
seven
right.
years it
Oh,
took
I
me to do college
understand. I
because I was
understand.
trying to avoid it. I hate math, honestly.
Right, yeah, chemistry. It was science and chemistry for me. I was like, no, I took geology. Finally, ended up taking geology. I think I made a C or a D, but
Yeah,
it was like, let me take English. Let me take something else. For
yeah, it's
sure.
not easy juggling those two, but I
Yeah.
made sure to get it done. I tried to be a man of my word,
Uh
and
huh.
and we need that.
Yeah, for sure. And once you commit to something, like you say, you want to do, and maybe did you tell some other people, or did you just commit to yourself?
I mostly committed to myself in the
Uh-huh.
beginning. I didn't really tell anybody until near or at the release date.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Starting out with family and a few friends, and then a few colleagues in college.
Uh-huh.
But I never wrote this to make any sort of money, because poetry doesn't really do that unless you're someone like maybe Langston Hughes or someone.
Right, right. That's right. That's right.
But
Well, and it's interesting though, because I was very surprised. We went to the library conference a couple of years ago. Texas has the biggest state library conference because it's such a
mhm,
big state. So we have 5 to 7,000 public and school librarians that come together at any given year. And obviously, we've been a little less because of COVID, and they had to do it online for a couple of years due to COVID. But we're back
mhm,
going in person now. But before that, right before COVID, we had a conversation. We had a lady that had 3 poetry books, and
mm,
she sold out, because the high schools were teaching poetry in April, and we were there in like
mhm.
March, the end of March, and they're like, we're going to be studying poetry, and we don't have any good contemporary poets that or poetry books. So they were very excited. She gave the first one, and then they bought the second and third one. And I mean, I
That's
was
a good
really
strategy,
blown away. Yeah, so good strategy. So that's what I'm telling you. Go ahead and write that third poetry book.
because April is National Poetry Month. So
Yeah, it's coming up. So there's a lot more about poetry than most people realize, and certainly
oh
more than
yeah,
I realized. Because I would have before that, I would have said, yeah, there's a lot of things, but it's like contests, it's like poetry magazines. I really
mhm.
had no idea that it was a huge opportunity in the high schools, especially
Oh yeah,
across the state. And like you say, with Texas being one of the biggest states, and every community, the biggest employer is the school district,
mhm,
for the most part, unless there's a big plant or something. So
mhm,
and they have kids every year. So it's an ongoing thing. It's not like you sell it one time and that's it. You
mhm.
can sell to the next class and the next class, or if the teacher likes you or likes what you're doing, they may recommend it as something for their students to use as supplemental, as a supplemental text, in other words.
Definitely.
So that's a good possibility. Well, we've got some folks on. I know Jenny jumped on, Jenny Gold, and I think Russ was there waving at us, and Jim Kunkel. You got probably know some of these folks. So,
Mhm.
well, tell us what surprised you, Jordan, about the process, just the writing and the publishing and the marketing process. Was there anything that kind of stands out to you as the biggest surprise, or maybe the biggest challenge?
Honestly, the biggest challenge for me was trying to get reviews. I'm sure a lot of authors can say the same thing. Um,
Yeah, for
we all
sure.
have busy lives. We're pretty much consumed with everyday activities and everyday tasks. But
Hmm.
having that and trying to acquire that feedback really meant a lot to me.
Yeah,
But
for
in the
sure.
midst of doing that, it was kind of a battle for me to not fall into becoming a people pleaser. And
Right.
that was one of the biggest things I struggled with for a long time. And it took a long time for me to overcome that and to write for me at the same time, write something that people can benefit from at the
Right.
same time. And I think you can impact people without having to please them. I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a good way to put it, that you can impact people's lives without, giving up yourself and giving up your boundaries and identity,
Hmm.
and still write something that has meaning, and especially like you say, if it's some kind of an emotional journey or some kind of journey that you took, that people can relate to, because that really is how people relate to us. That's why the connection is so important, and
Hmm.
building community, because we want to be connected to each other, and when somebody likes your stuff, they want to read more, of you, or
Yeah.
if they hear you speak somewhere, or they hear you on a show, they want to say, well, what's next, what else have you got?
Hmm. Yeah.
And if you only got one thing, it's kind of difficult. But if you got two or three things, or you can say this is the next thing, and then this is the next thing.
That comes with
um,
territory too.
Yeah, it could. It really helps you. So, yeah, there's Russ Hedge. He's liking those shades too. Well, Jordan's always cool no matter what, and he's a snappy dresser. But he did have some eye surgery this week, and so that's
That's why
why
I'm
another
wearing them.
reason. That's another reason he's sporting his shades here today. But no, we were just glad to have Jordan on here with us, and those of you that are watching and listening, this also shows you you're never too young, you're never too old, you're never too, all the reasons and excuses that we use. Nobody knows us. Nobody will buy. Why would anybody buy my stuff? All of those things just need to disappear. You really just need to wipe those things out of your mind
Hmm.
and just focus on the writing. Just focus on what you want people to share with people because there's somebody out there. There's
Yeah.
somebody out there that needs to hear it, that wants to hear it, that's going to read it. And obviously you have to tell people about it. You have to, and I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of authors.
Hmm.
They're just not used to promoting themselves. None of us are.
Yeah.
A lot of us that are older, we were told not to brag on ourselves, that was a no-no, when I was growing up. And so it's hard to get past some of those, messages in our mind. We just have to
Hmm.
replace them with positive messages. If it helps one person, I think most of us as writers, if one person says, "Wow, I read what you wrote and it really impacted my life or it really made a difference for me," I mean, that's enough to keep us going for months.
Oh yeah. I can
you
attest.
know, and we got to let go of that one person that said, "Well, you missed this comma here." There's
Yeah.
always
There's always
somebody.
one. There's always one. Especially, and I had that with my latest book. I'll probably discuss that when
Yeah,
we get to
that's what
that.
we're going to talk about next. I really want to get to the creativity because I think that's really exciting, and that's always been something I've always thought and wondered and really been intrigued with the creative process and
Hmm.
how behavior and why people do the things they do
Yeah.
and how they do those things. So let's talk about that. I thought we had some book profiles here. Russ Johns, where are you at? Put those books up. Check that file. We should have some book covers here. But your latest book, the last book that you just published recently, tell us about the title of that, and let's talk about that a little bit.
Man, this May it'll be 6 years since I put that out. It's
Oh, has
called
it been that long? Oh, wow. Okay, I
yeah.
didn't realize it had been that long. Okay.
It's called Create, Execute, Repeat.
Uh
And
huh.
I got the title off of those. They have these T-shirts now that they sell in stores with eat, sleep, repeat, those kind of things.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's what I modeled that afterward.
Yeah. Okay. That's
The
perfect. I love
subtitle
it.
leveraging, and yeah, the subtitle leveraging creativity in business and life.
Uh huh.
And with that, I wanted people to know that creativity is much more than just the arts and
Right.
something that should be retained in our lives from childhood and even
Hmm.
onto adulthood, and it never lose that spark and lose that creative streak because it can be very easy to have that taken from you. Um, and you might not know that it's been taken from you, but
Right. We let
um,
people squash our creativity, I think, or if some, like you say, if somebody says something negative to us, and I think people do. I think people tend to pigeonhole and think, oh, well, if you're not a painter, you're not a musician, if you're not an author, you're not really a writer. But
yeah,
that's not, I mean, you're not really an artist or a creative person, but you can be creative in accounting just
oh
because you
yeah,
like numbers. Even if Jordan and I don't like numbers, we don't want to deal with numbers, but there are a
amen.
lot of there are a lot of people out there that love numbers, and for them, that's a creative expression. It can be a way to creatively express themselves, and
Hmm.
science the same way. I have
Yeah,
friends
graphic
that,
design.
yeah, and whether that's geology or biology or earth sciences, they're the
Hmm.
celestial or astrology or astronomy or whatever it's called. There's all kinds of different things, and careers or professions or opportunities,
Hmm.
and they all have a form of creativity. And so
Yeah,
so here's
because
the
creativity, even every industry practically has creativity in some way. Because I tied that in with innovation on the fifth chapter, and they go hand in hand. Because
Mhm.
without innovation, then you'll be stagnant
Well, you're right. And it's back to that taking action, like we talked about at the very beginning, that,
Hmm.
you can have an idea for something, or you can have something you think you want to do, but if you don't ever take any action and take some steps to make it happen, it's just sitting there. You
Yeah, it's
know,
just
it,
an idea.
it never comes to fruition without that implementation. And like you say, without applying some maybe sweat equity or some
Hmm.
monetary or some other or some energy to that process. So that's great. And yeah, and I think it's like you say, I think we let people steal our creative expression from us, or and we become fearful sometimes of what people will think or say or do, and
Yeah,
we
it's
got to
mostly
get
on
past
us.
that.
We're our biggest critic. We can be our biggest enemy. We can be our biggest um, catalyst of doubt and insecurity.
Yeah.
And yeah, I learned that early on, but we can't allow that to happen. Otherwise, we have these ideas that'll go unheard
Hmm.
or unpublished, and we can't do that because um, everything being put out into the world right now is not always very edifying, and that's part of why I put this out. I want to encourage, especially my generation. I want to encourage us to continue to pursue creative outlets, whether music, writing, painting, anything like that, especially as a way to deal with natural fluctuations in life and natural means of adversity, because
Right, and
the
stress,
world
like
wants to
you
give us
say.
the world wants us to pull us back into things like smoking and drugs, and
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to
Right.
be to allow that to be an option for my generation and
Yeah.
those forthcoming. There has to be a better way, and one of those ways for me is creative expression. And I hope that um,
Yeah.
I
The
hope the same can be
message and the
applied to everyone
message.
else, other people as well.
Yeah. So I hope y'all are listening. Like you say, that Jordan's been dropping some really good nuggets here. That these are alternatives. When you engage in creative expression, it reduces your stress level. It keeps it makes you more creative. The more you take action, the more creative you get. When you begin to collaborate with other people,
Hmm.
and you brainstorm and you do all those things, that just gets both sides of your brain working. You also have that creative and critical thinking that goes on. And sometimes we kind of get stuck in one side or the other.
Hmm.
And we can't do that because we've got to go back and forth. Just be creative. Give your time and give yourself some space and just be creative, whatever that is. It might be gardening, it might be playing golf. It could be working on cars.
Yeah,
That could be creative for somebody that has that inclination or that talent or that skill or that desire. But then you come back and you worry about, well, is it going to be beneficial, or is this something I could do as a business, or is this something I could sell, or is this something I could make a product out of? That all comes after you've come up
yeah,
with the creative part of it. So
yeah.
all right, so Russ is flashing some of his things, but we will have this in the notes too. We will have the links to Jordan's 30 books here on Amazon. You can find them there. Is there anything else? Do you have a website, or do you prefer people just find you on social media?
Social media for now. Um,
Okay.
Maybe someday I'll do a website. I've been meaning to for years, but
Yeah, it's kind of the next thing. And sometimes you don't need it, especially with Amazon, because Amazon gives you an author page. And so,
yeah,
like you say, you can put your bio there, you can put your description. And so there's one of the books. That's amazon.com/DP/B017RPXS36. So that's the first book, I think, in the Jordan's poetry book. And so we will put those things in the show notes, and so you'll always be able to go back there and find those things. Jordan, what would you tell somebody that maybe they're new and they've just thought about maybe writing something, but they haven't really started? What would you tell them?
I don't want to be cliche. A lot of advice I've been hearing is to just write, but it's more than that.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it doesn't always come out that easy, and I would say um, to not overthink it, also, and really be intentional about your time and where you are and who you surround yourself with, because all of these events, things like that in life can unexpectedly, they can instill in you inspiration that comes and an idea to write down. Um, Obviously really
Yeah,
be
and you
purposeful.
never know when you're having a conversation with somebody and something's going to come up.
Yeah, and you can always
You know,
revisit. You can always revise and revisit that.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a great. I think that's a great strategy. So be listening, be engaged with people. You never know where a creative thought or it's going to come up, and how you might be able to take that and
And be
mix
curious
it.
too. Be
Yeah,
curious, but also have discernment too.
yeah, for sure, and that's the thing, because you can take something that you see over here, and something you see over here, and put the two together, and they've never been put together before. But you can put
Hmm.
those two things together and maybe come up with something new.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people think that maybe there's nothing new on the earth, but I don't think that's true. I think we're such creative things, and I think creativity is going to be more important going forward,
Hmm.
because as technology takes over and as AI and a lot of these other things come along, they're going to take care of some of those rote jobs, some of those repetitive jobs that we've
Yeah.
done as people. And we're going to, I think corporations and small businesses or organizations, whatever institutions, they're going to need more people that are creative or that have that ability to think creatively, don't you think?
Hmm. Definitely. I learned to embrace AI. I was a little intimidated at first, but I'm learning to navigate it now and seeing what it really represents and what can be sought out of it.
Yeah, and it's probably just another tool. I mean, right now, I mean, eventually it may become more than that. But I think I was kind of the same way, and I kind of still have mixed feelings about some of it.
Hmm.
But I think it's like you say, you got to explore anything new that comes along. I mean, we didn't know about social media, 10 years ago. We didn't have
Hmm.
Facebook. We didn't have LinkedIn. We didn't have live streaming like this. I mean, you could do it, but it was really expensive. Not just anybody could get on and start sharing their information. And so the tools are really valuable.
Yeah.
And since we're talking technology, we're going to have our buddy Russ Johns, our co-host here for the Author Adventure, come back on. And I know
I
you and
just wanted to jump in before we wrap it up today because it's been a great conversation and I love talking about this kind of activity. And Jordan, you've been a friend, you've been someone that I've followed and connected with in person, which is kind of rare these days. It's like, okay, we have an opportunity to actually, and like you were talking about technology, and think of it just as a tool. It's just a tool, just like a pen or a pencil or a computer. And we
Hmm.
just have to take and adjust the tools that we're using to our advantage. How can we leverage this into a creative process? And I just love the opportunity to help more people. And Liz and I gravitated on that subject. And it's like, how can we increase the ability for other people to stay creative? And this show is an example of that process. And people like yourself, Jordan, are highlighting that activity and bringing it to the communities that surround us all day long. So I just want to applaud you and thank you for your efforts and continued inspiration. So thank you.
Thank you, Russ. It
yeah,
really means a
and
lot being
keep
connected with you all
writing.
these years.
Do you have something you're working on now?
I
Or
am.
are you just doing the job? So
He always has something work. He's always working on something, Liz.
The job search. I'm writing for a magazine currently
uh-huh.
since June of
Yeah,
last
I've
year.
seen it. It's great. Yeah.
And my next release will be out this coming August, Refinement 2.0. It will be a
Okay.
collection of poetry and essays, and I chose the title Refinement because it's
Yeah.
going to deal with a lot about the pandemic and just stuff we really should be asking ourselves is, are we being refined on a daily basis, or are we allowing everything we see to regress us, whether that's on the news, the um,
Yeah.
the news
Yeah.
reports, and what we hear on a daily basis between mainstream media and these echo chambers that provide information but aren't really always accurate. And have we become at least better in this whole process? Are we allowing ourselves to get immune, not just physically, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that is it. And I think those of us that are positive and that are want to be motivational, want to be inspirational, that we've got to band together and we've got to support each other and we've got to engage in activity, because it is easy for people to go down the other road. It is easy to be depressed. It would be easy to be sad or to be disappointed or whatever, but life is really a gift, and we have that choice. As our friend Russ Hedge says, life happens and then you choose. And so, we appreciate that you're choosing a positive route, that you're a positive role model, not only for your generation, but for those of us that are older than you. You've certainly been an inspiration, I know, for Russ and for Jenny and some of our other folks that have been on here today, Jim. And so, if there's one last thing you want to share with the audience, Jordan, what would that be?
I would say that there's going to be a lot going on in the future, going forth. Forthcoming challenges that we've now seen the last 3 years. But I would say that don't let it hinder you, but keep allowing it to refine you and allowing you to grow and flourish. And don't cave into the plethora of negativity that's being pumped out by the mainstream media and the news, because every day is a chance. Every day we have a choice to be better than we were yesterday. Every day we have a chance to walk in our God-given purpose and our authority and serve Him and serve others and serve those around us and be a mean of enlightenment and be a mean of encouragement and edification. And we need that more now than ever. More
now than ever. I think you're absolutely right. So, well, thank you, Jordan, for being on the show with us here. I mean, the time goes so fast, but once you get that other book written, you'll have to come back and we'll do a part 2 and we'll talk more about some of these things. And in the meantime, you can find Jordan. He's on LinkedIn. It's Jordan Thomas, JordanThomas. If you're listening to our podcast, check Jordan out on LinkedIn. He'd be glad to connect with you. And if you haven't connected with Russ and I, you can do that as well, Russ Johns or Liz Lawless. And we thank you for watching and listening. And Russ, we're here every
Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time.
Great. And we're sharing the 5 secrets in the art and business of publishing. And so thanks, Jordan, for being with us. And you can always come back and listen to the show. It's archived on YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel at Author Adventure and subscribe. And go back and watch those other interviews too. And go back and watch this interview with Jordan, because he really shared some significant things that are important to helping you live a positive and a fulfilling life. So we appreciate you, Jordan, and we'll see you probably on another live stream.
Take care. Enjoy the day. Bye.